In this video, we're going to continue with the chess set series, and we're going to learn how to make this chessboard here. So I have this chessboard in the scene here, and I'm going to show you how to make it. So here I have it all made. So I'll pick it. You can see when it's all picked, it turns green. You can see how it works, and its subdivisions there. So I'm going to turn off that. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do, if you see here, this is a chessboard. It's got color on it. It's got each little, you got, different faces for it. Okay. So I'll show you how I made this. Okay. So I'm going to switch off this piece here. All right. So I'm just going to start with a cube. Okay. So there we go. Got our little cube. Put it on the grid so we can see it here. Have some kind of reference here. Okay. So there's the cube. I know I want it to be 40 by 40. I'm not going to scale it. I don't want to use scale. I actually want to use what these things called inputs. So we've gone over this in class, but I just want to go over it again over here. You can control the actual size of the object in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in 40. Okay. I'm going to type in 40 for its depth. Okay. So there we go. And I want it just one unit high. Okay. And I'm probably going to want to move it down because I want to move it down so it's sitting on the ground because I want all my chess pieces to pop in and be kind of at the ground level. Later, you might want to change this around, but I'm just doing this for modeling purposes. Okay. So again, also too, now I have to move this down. So I have to use the pivot trick. Because if I want to move this, now all of a sudden this is right in the middle of the object, okay? But I want it to be on one of the faces here, right? So I think I'm going to move it up to the top face and then move the whole thing down, okay? So if you want to change your pivot, remember, type in D, and you're in your pivot mode, okay? And now I want to move this up, and the trick for moving the pivot up to the face of something is to pull it in its Y direction, and you want to hold your V key, which is going to snap to points. Okay, so that's snapping to points. And always remember then to type D again. So it's now it's not in pivot mode anymore. Now it's actually the real object. Okay, and then I want to move it down because I want to move it down to the level plane there. So I'm also going to continue using X keys and hotkeys and snaps, and that hotkey for snap to grid is X. Okay, so there we go. So there we go. Now you'll see it here. Now if we look in this view, perspective view, you see it's just slightly under the grid plane there. Okay. All right. So remember also to always get out of whatever your function mode is. So now I'm just put it in standard pick mode. Okay. So now another thing too is I want to give it the subdivisions. So I know from a chessboard it's 8 by 8 subdivisions. So I'm going to type in 8 over here back in the inputs. Okay. And I don't want to change the height ones because those will be here, but I do want to change the depth units here. Okay. So I'm going to type in 8. Okay. And also too, I'm going to use this moment to, let me switch off the grid here. We don't really need the grid in this scene here. It kind of gets a little confusing. Okay. So now I have all the, the elements here. Let me put it on its own grid layer so I can switch on the other one. Okay. So these all kind of correspond. I have subdivisions for each one of these here. Okay. So I'm going to switch this back on. So these are subdivided in the correct number. Okay. All right. Now also, so these inputs is important because this is scaling the actual object. This is actually changing the object size in here. Okay. Like the sub object. Okay. And this is actually giving it subdivision. So you're also going to want this too if you want to be very specific with controlling your subdivisions when you do polygon editing. Okay. Now, all this can also be accessed over here in the attribute editor. So I just want everybody, and we've already done everything, but I want everybody to see it over here as well. So if you see, don't get confused when you go into the attribute editor. When I first started mine, I never even touched this thing, but just pick on these different tabs up here and you'll see different things going on. Like it has its layer and it has its shape and form. And so, you know, just poke around till you find the thing that looks kind of familiar. Okay, so this makes sense. Polycube history. Okay, so it's accessing our history here. So it has a width, has a height, has a depth, and has subdivisions. Okay, so you could access everything in here as well. Okay, and also to remember, if you ever scale something up and if you copy this, like if you copy this, but you want to keep these access to these things, you have to go up here to edit, and then you have to go to duplicate. Go to duplicate special. I think it's in duplicate special. Yeah, you'll have to do duplicate special. You can either do this thing called instance, and then instance will allow you to, whenever you change the first object, everything else will change. So that's a good way to do it. Or you can do this. You click this button here, say duplicate input graph, and then all these things will follow. Like its history will follow with the new object. Okay. I know history's been a little, you know, new for everybody to learn, and it's kind of, there's more layers of things to learn, but you'll get it as you know, develop in Maya. But this is a good spot just to show you these little things, and always refer back to these videos. Like, where did you get that thing? What button do you pick? Because if I duplicate this, say, I'll show you. If I go to, if I don't have it picked, let me go to apply, and then let me go to. Okay, so now if I moved it up, now you notice in here it doesn't have all of that input control there. Okay, you notice here. Okay, so let me go back. Let me go here, and it's inputs. It doesn't have any inputs. Okay, see, I'm here in inputs. It doesn't have anything because it didn't copy the history of that object. This may seem a little complicated at first to understand, but later you will understand, because you'll copy something, you want to be changing it, and you'll be like, where did that go? Because you see, like here, look, I picked on the original object, and in the inputs, this is still here. Okay. All right. So now if you wanted to duplicate that, let me show you. Go to duplicate. You have to go to duplicate special, because that gives you the under the hood controls. Okay. So then I would click that. Oh, you know what? I realized, let me change this. I was moving object 2 before when I was moving something. That's why it's always good to go to reset. I forgot to do that. I forgot to use my own rule. Okay, so now if I do the input, if I duplicate input graph, I'll hit apply, close. Now, if you notice, when I move this up, this has its own input controls. So it's still there, okay? So like I said, this will be very handy. It's some the kind of thing you'll forget, but someday you'll be like, oh, wait a minute, how did the professor do that? Okay, so there it is. Okay, so that's pretty simple there. Okay, let me go back into pick mode. So I'm just picking. All right, now what I'm going to do, now we want to, let me switch this off. How do we get these light and dark patterns on here? So I need to get these in here. Right, I'm not going to do it with a texture map. I'm just going to apply materials here. And we haven't done much with applying materials yet. We've gone over in class a little bit, but I haven't made videos on it yet. So this is the most basic level. There's a little trick to this, because we're going to be applying a material to the whole object, and then we're going to be applying materials by face. So I'm actually going to do the reverse pattern. So I'm going to make it black first, because then you'll see the white come out more clearly. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. First thing is you pick the object. Okay, and then we have all our different shelves up here. So you're going to go over to your rendering shelf. You're going to get off your polygon modeling shelf. You're going to your rendering shelf. Okay, and you're going to pick one of these little balls here. Okay, we have many lessons on these in the future. This is the most basic level, but this is the most basic material. This is the Maya standard material. So this is the most basic material. This is anisotropic. This is blend. This is Lambert. Lambert is the default material that comes on Maya objects, and you'll see it's very dull. It doesn't have any kind of highlights or anything like that. This is Fong and Fong E. These are more plasticky looking. So each one of these has a bunch of controls inside of them. So I'm just going to put the standard material on it. So what you do is you make sure to have your object picked, and then you click on this little ball there. Okay. So now what it does is it automatically pops open your attribute editor, that little place people don't like to go. But it's sending you right there, because that will immediately let you control the object's color. Okay. So there is some much more sophisticated ways to deal with this, but this is the most basic level. Okay. So now again, you got all the tabs over here. So you're going to go over here. This new tab showed up. It says standard surface 4. So that is this ball over here, okay? So now I'm gonna pick on that, okay? And I'm going to change the color here. I'm gonna change it to black, okay? So now everything is black, okay? Now, we can rename this. Okay, I can rename this black, which would be proper. I think I already have black in here because I already have it from the other file. So I'll call this black 02. Sometimes I also too, I'm going to take a look at these things. I'll put MAT at the end just so it doesn't conflict with anything else. I spelled it wrong. Okay. Oh, you know what? I don't think the other one has mat. Let me try that. Yeah, if I do this. Okay, so I have, my spelling is terrible today. BLACK. I had to put an O in there for some reason. All right, so black mat. I'm going to try that. Okay, so then you hit enter. Okay, there we go. So there we go. I have that. Okay. So now what I want to do, this is a little trickier. This is not the standard way you do things, but I'm gonna be just adding materials by face. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna basically go pick that checker pattern. Okay. Normally you're just putting materials on a certain object. Usually you don't put it on by face, but sometimes you do. So it's a little tricky. But so what I would do is our standard way. You would either, go through the modeling toolkit, which is, this is easy because it's, you just pick, okay? So now what we would do is we would just zigzag along. Okay. Or if you want to just keep zebra patterning like that. Okay, so now all those are selected. So now you can also put a material on by face. So what I would do, now I have just these selected. I didn't select by object, I selected by face, right? So now I go to the surface standard, or standard surface shader again. I click on it, boom. Okay, so now let's put something on there, okay? And then there we go, I have that in there. Okay, so now I would, and by default it is white. So, and then I would call this white underscore MAT. Okay, enter. There we go. Okay, so let me go back here. Let me get myself back in object mode, and then there it is. There is your new chessboard. Okay, and it fits everything perfectly. And you would do the same thing for your chess pieces. We will just add materials on them. You do the same thing. You click on your object, and in fact, let me bring an object in. I'll show you how to import an object. So if you're making your whole chess set, well, I'll just do one of these. So if we went to File, we would do Import. Okay, so if this is, you use import when you want to bring in, when you're sitting in, you have a model file open that you've modeled on, you want to bring other objects in. And typically also, the way I've modeled this chess set is the way you want to do things. You want to model each piece by itself. You don't want to model everything in one giant file because that makes that file very complicated. If you want to isolate things, it's tough. If you have a lot of parts in there, you might want to use one of these elements in something else, but just that one. So generally you're going to bring in just one piece. So I'll bring in a king, okay? Boom, there we go. So now I brought in the king, and it brought in all its stuff too. Like it brought in all the stuff from the demo file I had, okay? It'll bring in all the layers. So, and I want to switch off. I don't want the image plane on. I don't need a bunch of these things. So I think I'm going to, I think the last bit is just the piece I need. So I'm going to delete. Okay. And here's another trick too. I've been working with some students on this. Like if you start getting a bunch of layers in here, you can go to layer, and you can either delete a selected layer, or you can go to this, delete unused layers. Boom. Because the only thing I have in here is the king geo, okay? So now it looks white, but it's not white. It doesn't have a white material on it. I'm going to pick it. Oops, I have to unreference it. So I'm going to pick it. All right, if I want to make it black here, let me make it a black king. Okay. So now if I want to assign that material, the quickest way and easiest way to do this right now, until I start showing class a whole bunch of other things with materials and things like that, is just the way we use the right mouse button to pick on something to get its components. The material is also kind of in the component area of the object. Oops. So what you want to do is you want to go down here in the bottom is you have all your materials. Okay. So just try and remember that. It's a little tricky at first. This is very tricky to do at first, okay? So you can go to assignment, new material. You can assign a favorite material. So again, you see those names we had up there, the standard, blend, Lambert, layered shade of Fong-E. You could just give it a whole new one here, or you could go all the way down here to assign an existing material. So if you notice, here's my, I have a whole variety of things I've already made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it the black that I already have there. Okay. So well, probably for this demo, it's not so good because you can't really see anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick it again. And if I wanted to change it, like for demo purposes right now, I'll give it the white material. Okay. So you can see that a little better. Okay. So there we go. So I put two different materials on it. I put the materials on the board, and then you adjust later when you have all your pieces. After you've made your board, you'll have your one board there. Then you start loading all your pieces in. Okay, and you start putting your materials on them when they're all together. Okay, so that is our chessboard with a single piece with a very basic materials lesson. Okay, all right, that's it for this one.